Mr. Bill Freeman, whose group speaks for all wool brokers in Newcastle, said the train stoppage means buyers can't take delivery, so payments to growers have been deferred. Sales last week saw 19,000 bales of New England and North West wool, 7,000 Queensland bales change hands. But the wool can't be moved. The effects are that buyers aren't being paid. Mills, particularly those overseas, are running short of fleece.
The effect is very dramatic. There's almost $15 million worth of wool held up, or payment for which has been held up following our sale last week. And of course this means that growers are going to be short of money if the strike continues. That's one side of it. The other side is that many buyers have been unable to arrange for shipment of their wool from Newcastle to Sydney and from thereafter shipment overseas, and there's quite immense problems in meeting combing commitments and shipping deadlines in the Northern Hemisphere at this time.
What about the long-term effect? Because we've all heard that there's a cloud hanging over Newcastle as a wool centre anyway. This will presumably do nothing to help.
No, it's a very serious problem, and of course we're now reaching the stage where the wool that comes to the centre is from fringe areas who support Newcastle, and if that wool doesn't come to Newcastle in the next 6 months, of course that will have very dramatic effects on the centre.
Preliminary talks have already been held with the unions concerned, and they in turn have requested talks with the State Works Minister, Mr. Torres. The General Manager of the dockyard, Mr. Kelly, left today to talk to Europe on the submarine project. Acting Minister, Mr. Bob Cox, says it's inevitable that some of the dockyard's 450 employees will have to go.
The first discussion was held yesterday, and management and the Works Executive Council met and discussed the future operation of the yard over the next 12 months, and the indications, as I just mentioned, of 81 number being reduced, and they're prepared to discuss the matter. They've got a few decisions they have to make amongst themselves. They've asked for a meeting with the Minister for Public Works, Mr. Brereton, and following that we'll have further discussion with the unions again on the numbers.
Everyone's quite aware of the downturn industrially, but are there any peculiar problems for the dockyard?
Nothing peculiar. It's the similar other companies around the district and throughout Australia. The metal industry and the heavy manufacturing area is depressed. We've had a reasonable result this last financial year in terms of volume, but the forward predictions are less than this year, so therefore we must have to adjust our budget accordingly.
And what about ship repair?
Ship repair this last financial year has been quite reasonable, but again the number of ships available on the Australian coast is reduced, and the predictions again are down this year, so therefore we don't anticipate the same sales.
The Metal Trades Industry Association is about to conduct a survey Australia-wide. About 300 local companies are expected to respond to questions on productivity, employment levels, sales and anticipated market trends for the year. The result of that survey should be known by March, but already there is little room for optimism on the local scene. More than 200 metal workers, tradesmen and apprentices have been retrenched since Christmas. 81 could go from the state dockyard because of declining orders for ship repairs and heavy engineering work. The dockyard once employed over 1,000 workers. That figure is now past. More than 50 tradesmen and staff lost their jobs when steel mains at Hexham closed down. All production at the factory ceased last Friday. Prince Engineering at Rutherford will retrench 20 boilermakers and 7 metal workers, members of the FIA. The fabricating shop was set up to do work for the Bayswater Power Station, which is nearing completion. 7 apprentice boilermakers coming out of their time at Eglow Engineering at Kooragang Island will not be offered full-time jobs, and 30 casuals employed over Christmas are again looking for work. Last Friday, 20 men, including 15 boilermakers, were given 3 weeks' notice from AB Ray's Engineering and Fabrication Works at Bullaroo. And the list goes on.
Recession is just really starting to hit hard in this area. mainly
Neil
because
Gow
of
is the Newcastle Secretary of the Metal Trades Federation,
We
an
rely
organisation which
particularly on
represents the
the
7
steel
major metal
and the
industry
resources
unions.
industry. Unfortunately, it's a very sad occasion because there's no real chance in the Newcastle area of them being able to pick up work. Very few of them will get jobs in the near future, and in our office alone we have an unemployed officer here working full time on the situation, and his card system shows around 600 tradesmen unemployed in this area alone.
The complex, if given the go-ahead by the council, will be situated north of the commercial centre in the new subdivision at Salamander Bay. According to a spokesman from the councillors are impressed with the concept and believe it will give the subdivision yet another boost. Worth $5 million, it will include 12 tennis courts, 50 villa-style holiday units, a pool, a spa, a sauna and a gymnasium. In addition to these amenities, the complex will also include dormitory-style accommodation for what Tony Roach hopes will be the training of future Australian champions. Council received $400,000 for the sale of the land, and if it decides to allow it to proceed, the Salamander Tennis Ranch should be operational by the end of this year.
In Gosford, the problems of drug and alcohol abuse are no worse than in other areas of the state. But there is a problem, and at present there are inadequate facilities to cater for the people who want help. Now, due to the efforts of various people in the local community,
I got wrecked on Great Triple Island.
get the facilities to look after people with these problems. The idea of the centre was originally suggested by a former drug addict in the area who experienced the lack of adequate local help for addicts and alcoholics. The steering committee organising the centre will soon be approaching the state and federal government for the $50,000 needed to get the centre into operation. The centre will offer 24-hour service to drug addicts and alcoholics, and as Central Coast community worker Mark McConnell explains, the centre will be the backbone for curing people with these problems in the area.
There will be a 24-hour service. Say if an addict wants to come down off some sort of drug or get off alcohol, he'd ring the centre, he'd come in, we'd give him advice and support, assess his need. Does he want to dry out, say go to a detoxification unit, or perhaps he just needs personal support and advice. Whatever his need, would assess that first and then refer him on to an agency, say in Sydney, and actually would get him to that agency for help. It'll be a 24-hour service manned by ex-addicts with training in this kind of work. We'd also have a educative or preventive type of service. We'd go out to the schools, talk about the effects of drug abuse, trying not to highlight it or make it sound attractive to young people, more or less pointing the negative sides of drug abuse out to them.
Do the problems of drug abuse and alcoholism in the area warrant the formation of such a centre?
We believe that the Central Coast area hasn't got any worse or better drug problem than any other area in the state. We just haven't got that service that links the addicts in need of assistance with the programs that exist outside Gosford. So we think that the area does require this particular kind of service, but doesn't really reflect a serious problem. Other areas of similar size to Gosford have this kind of referral and assessment centre, and we feel that this area demands this service.
Good morning everyone and welcome. You know, I have a lot of favourite stocks or favourite companies, including BHP and CSR and James Hardie, just to name a few, but another favourite company of mine is CIG, Commonwealth Industrial Gases. And once again we've seen not only a record profit but also another bonus issue. Now bonus issues are gifts of shares which mean no cost to you, and many companies make bonus issues on a regular basis, and I include CIG in this category. Not only CIG, but dozens, in fact more than dozens and dozens of companies make regular bonus issues. Now, how can you find out if a company does make or follow these procedures? Well, the answer is very, very simple. Firstly, if you're an existing shareholder, you read the annual report. You don't throw it in the waste paper basket. Secondly, if you're not an existing shareholder, you contact a stockbroker or the stock exchange and obtain a company history. Now, some companies, in addition to CIG, who make regular bonus issues, would also include ANZ Bank, as I mentioned before, Pioneer Concrete. And when I talk about bonus issues, I don't mean just bonus issues in the sense of bonus issues. I'm also talking about cash issues as well, because that's a form of bonus issue. Pioneer Concrete, the Ampols, the International Combustions. Now, here's another first-class company that recently announced, and I'm going back around 6, 7 or 8 years, a series of bonus issues, and in 1983 they announced a mighty 1-for-1, yes, I repeat that, a 1-for-1 bonus issue. Now, you might think the share market isn't your scene. I disagree. So even if you've only got a few $100s, why not start off by buying a few shares in companies like Commonwealth Industrial Gases, International Combustion, Pioneer Concrete, James Hardie, etc., etc. I'll see you next Monday.
Betty Griffith's long association with the Shortland County Council began in 1941, when as a 16-year-old she went to work in Nesca House. After 8 years she changed jobs to work as a cashier and booking officer at Harlings for 2 years. She then returned to the County Council in 1951 as a cashier, where she has remained since. She says the biggest change she's witnessed during her 44 years employment was a shift last year from Nesca House to Hunter Street. The aspect of her job she's enjoyed the most has been meeting people.
What sorts of people have you met?
Some good and some bad, because when you're dealing with the public, that's it. But I must admit there are more good than more bad.
You first got the job at a time when only single women were employed.
Yes, in those days you were single, and if you got married, well, you automatically left. But of course things have changed now. Girls come, they get married and they stay here.
And yet you never married?
No, I was engaged when I was 21, so at least I've been asked.
What do you intend to do when you retire?
Her retirement pursuing her love of theatre and art.
The subcommittee looked at this matter and reported to the board of the Chamber last week, and their recommendation was that the number of aldermen shouldn't exceed 12. We haven't really considered 7 as an optimum number. It's a possibility though, and we'd certainly be looking at that very seriously.
Do you think there could be effective representation with 7?
I think there could be. It just really depends on the number of wards that are considered.
Well, Mr. Lewis seemed to indicate there may be no wards, but just one general area.
Well, that's another option, and if they just have the one ward, that would work quite well.
Mr. John Manning was an alderman and the Labor candidate for Lord Mayor at the time the council was sacked. Mr. Manning expressed doubt that only 7 aldermen could handle the necessary workload for adequate representation of the people.
The town clerk may not have taken into account the work that aldermen do other than the committees and council meetings. They attend many to the wants of the public at large. They have to respond and react to the people's wishes, and they attend residents' meetings and things like that, and also they receive phone calls and attend public meetings, protest meetings and all sorts of things. There are also the various committee meetings sponsored by council, such as oval committees and things like that. So an alderman possibly does in excess of 20 and up to 30 hours work as an alderman in addition to his normal work, and most of them do work for a living.
I don't think 7's effective. The amount of work that an alderman has to do, if he's doing his job properly, cannot be done by 7 aldermen for a city the size of Newcastle.
Well, how many would you suggest?
I would suggest 16. I would suggest a change of the ward system from 7 to 4 wards, with 4 aldermen being elected from each of the wards, with a total of 16.
resolved to maximise the haulage of coal to Newcastle in the wake of the Hunter Valley rail strike. Road and Rail Transport authorities plan to ship 25 to 35,000 tonnes of coal by truck each day and about 85 to 95,000 tonnes by rail. A similar road rail movement was put into action just after Christmas when striking train riders returned to work. Then about 100,000 tonnes are being shifted daily, 20,000 less than the present target. In Sydney today, a meeting also took place between the Train Drivers Union, the AFULE and the Australian Railways Union to try to resolve the issue at the heart of the dispute which caused the strike to coverage on the Valley Coal Plant. The meeting was chaired by the Secretary of the New South Wales Trade and Labour Council, Mr John McBean. At this stage, its outcome is unknown.
It was steady as you go in the tricky operation of the Ramsey fiberglass factory at Commodore. Now that the outer lining of the catamaran hull has been completed, the 17-ton structure had to be turned over. A specially made support, built on rollers, was constructed for the move. The next step is the joining of the decks and bulkheads and laminating the inside of the hull. Commander Peter Shevlin, the Navy liaison officer, says the project is a little behind schedule, but this is to be expected.
Because the amount of new technology problems we've run into with pioneering new techniques in Australia, and we've run into problems that there wasn't an immediate solution, which we've had to find the answer before we could progress. So we are a few weeks behind the original plan, but the problem areas have all been solved now, and we're going ahead well now, and there shouldn't be any similar delay for the second ship.
The fire has been burning on a wide and ragged front for the past 3 days, but today's sweltering temperatures and high winds have made the situation dangerous. Halls of smoke around the Westbrook and Mount Olive areas turn the blue sky into a brown haze. Cattle have instinctively moved to dams, waterholes and creeks, and fortunately most have been spared. With winds up to 20 knots, swinging unpredictably from the northwest to southwest and back again, efforts to control the fire have been severely hampered.
With the wind, it's on a big front, and the wind keeps changing direction and it keeps changing direction.
What's the biggest problem with a fire like this in a property your size?
Well, the biggest problem is probably fencing loss is the greatest. Here the stock have been able to keep away from the main heat of the fire because there have been old fires caused by lightning. So the stock seem to be all right, but the fence loss is going to be tremendous.
So far?
At one stage, the fire turned suddenly on this small homestead. Soldiers from the Singleton Army Base quickly moved their water tankers into position to fight back the flames. As soon as that fire was under control, there was another outbreak to contend with. Late today, graders were called in to build fire breaks around houses and sheds in the path of the fast-moving fire. It's hoped that this evening's southerly change has brought with it enough rain to control the situation.
And the hot, dry weather over the summer months has turned areas like this at Tanilba Bay into tinderboxes. Tanilba Bay season started at about midday in 40 degrees east and only 29% relative humidity. Fire authorities thought they had it under control until the wind changed direction at about 3 o'clock.
In the last half to 3/4 of an hour, we had a major wind change from the south, and then where we had a quiet fire prior to that, it stirred the fire up again. We've got a new front.
Do you consider that it's under control though?
The fire is under control at this stage, but there's a lot of work in keeping it under control. Brought about.
The wind change fanned the fire dangerously close to these pensioner units and adjacent houses. 5 bushfire brigades from the surrounding districts came to Tanilba Bay's aid and worked furiously to protect property. Meanwhile, at Shortland, 5 fire brigades battled a fire that had been burning the past 2 days, but had flared up in earnest today. All firemen could do was try to keep the flames from nearby houses, futile given the hot, gusty conditions. Late this afternoon there was a reprieve in the form of a southerly storm. Temperatures plummeted and the heavy rain doused the fires for now.
They came to praise from the Tip Lady and Tip Dancer for the decades during which her piano playing and her tireless charity work helped the community. Torres started as the piano player for the Silent Stream movement at the Cameo Theatre in New London. Since then, she has played the piano for the residents of the very long list of old people's homes and hospitals in the Newcastle area. Much of Thelma's volunteer work has been for the Newcastle District Women's Bowling Association. She is still in the entertainment committee and directs concert groups for District Bowling Club. For 4.5 years, she was the pianist for the Swanky Bowling Club concert group, which raised more than $24,000 for charity. Thelma has been involved in elections